morning, America. It's Friday.
It's time for Mornings at 8 with Jonathan Mark on AM 1480 WLEA.
Whoa, you gotta love Paul Harvey. I just love Fridays. Well, it is finally Friday. That's right, finally Friday, the end of a rather long and unusual week news-wise. Well, we're going to jump right into it this morning. We have on the line Assemblyman Phil Palmisano of Corning. Assemblyman, good morning.
Good to be with you again, Jonathan. How are you?
Very well, very well. Yeah, I know you're a really outspoken guy. I mean, a very outspoken guy, and you got to love it. In January, I think, in 2 months, the Justice Reform Act goes into effect. And we have had nothing but negative comments from lawmakers and law enforcement officials and yourself on this Justice Reform Act. And I wonder if people know exactly how it's going to work.
Well, Jonathan, I think that's a good point you brought up. There's been a really concerted effort to try to bring more attention to the public about what exactly is going to happen, what's about to happen, what's happening right now. Yesterday, I participated in a press conference over in Elmira in Chemung County with several of our district attorneys from the region, our sheriffs, chiefs of police from the region, and it was just a really cohesive group coming out to obviously and they were holding these press conferences all around the state to bring attention to this issue, to these criminal justice reforms, the dropping of the cash bail and discovery, and I'll talk about it a little bit. This is about the safety of the public, simply put, about the safety of the public. With the new laws that are going into effect come January, now judges aren't going to have as much discretion to set bail on certain crimes. So when the police arrest someone, they won't be able to, incarcerate them in prison until they're held for trial on bail. Won't be able to hold them for bail. They just have to give them issue them an appearance ticket to apply, or then come back to court later. Some of the situations, there's a whole list of them, but some of the situations, if someone were to burglarize your home, Jonathan, maybe not physically harm you, but burglarize your home, and then they were arrested, caught coming out the window, they wouldn't be able to be held in jail. They would just be issued an appearance ticket to come back to court at a later date.
Oh, yes. Sure, yeah, right.
Yes, it's amazing to me. Another one on domestic violence. I mean, people who abuse their partners. Now, if they're issued an appearance ticket, who's to stop them from coming back and finishing the job? That's another example. It's scary stuff. Drug dealers. If a drug dealer from New York City comes into Hornell and is dealing drugs to high school kids, fentanyl, dangerous fentanyl or heroin, with the growing heroin and the opioid problem we have, a drug dealer comes in now would not be able to be held from bail. If they come from New York City, they'd be issued an appearance ticket to come back to court. And someone from New York City is never going to come back here. They'll send the next drug person into town to do it because they know they're not going to get arrested and go to jail. They're just going to get issued an appearance ticket. That will be like a revolving wheel of drug dealers coming and knowing they're never going to be arrested. Just this week, earlier, there was a story in the New York Post, and this really keeps it in perspective as well. A drug dealer facing 100 years for sentencing drugs came out, basically thanked Governor Cuomo and said, "Cuomo for president," because Governor Cuomo has supported this policy of getting rid of the bail and also the discovery. Changes that are being made is very, very dangerous stuff, Jonathan. The public needs to know. So now when people get arrested, now the DAs are going to have to work with law enforcement and provide all the discovery information to the criminal defense and the defendants within 15 days. That's very difficult because you're constantly trying to build a case if you talk to them. It takes time. 15 days is going to be a very burdensome challenge financially, so this is another unfunded mandate that's placed on our localities. They have to, if you talk to the DA's office in Steuben County, I think their budget for their office went up some $400,000, $300,000. That's a significant impact. That's going to be paid by the property taxpayers. And for Governor Cuomo and others to say this is an unfunded mandate because they're going to save money because people aren't going to be in their prisons anymore and they can just shift resources. Well, it doesn't work that way, Jonathan, because when you have a jail in your county, it's certified. I think like Steuben County is certified for over 200 plus beds. You have to have staffing to cover the capacity of that facility, not just how many people are in that facility. You have to provide staffing and have people on staff to cover the capacity if it should be filled. So to say that they could just move money from one pot to another, it doesn't work that way. This is a significant and serious unfunded mandate that's going to be burdensome to our counties, which is hence the property taxpayer. This is very dangerous stuff. This is about the safety of the public, and so that's why these press conferences went out around the state yesterday to try to bring attention to this issue. And hopefully, people will call the governor and call the legislative leaders and say, rescind this. We've introduced legislation in our house to rescind this. No one's saying we couldn't have reforms, but certainly if you're going to do reforms like this, include the stakeholders like our sheriffs, like our DAs, our law enforcement personnel as part of the discussion. And don't ram it through in the middle of a budget process. That was another big flaw with this bill. They put all these changes in the middle of the budget process, putting policy like this. Something like this significant, deserved to have public hearings and public input and listening to law enforcement, but they did none of that. They just had these really liberal, progressive legislators working with the governor to pass these so-called criminal justice reforms, which does nothing to make our communities safe. It makes it less safe, and basically, when you pay more from the taxpayer perspective, you think you're getting more. You might get more safe, or not. You're paying more money to be less safe.
Well, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on the line. Probably, Assemblyman, most of our listeners aren't attorneys. So to back up for a second here, what is discovery? What does that mean?
Discovery is like, well, and I'm not an attorney, it's basically evidence that's gathered that they might have, whether it's body cameras, testimony, that witnesses that come forward. Think about this. You have a witness to a crime that comes forward and brings that testimony forward. Now, that information, that witness's name, sometimes they say that would be near the end. When they get close to trial, now that witness's name, address, would have to be disclosed to the defendant. After 15 days, think of it as someone who's testifying against a gang or a drug dealer or something like that. That's very dangerous that they can do that. That has to be related. And you're not going to have confidential informants anymore for the law enforcement. It's going to make it much more difficult for our law enforcement to do their jobs. I think Sheriff Adler said it best when we were having a conversation about this issue. He goes, it's like you're taking the handcuffs off the criminals and putting on the law enforcement. You're taking away tools they need to keep our communities safe. Our law enforcement are brave and dedicated individuals who go out in the community every day. They don't know if they're going to come home to their loved one because they have a very dangerous job, and we're taking tools away from them to keep our communities safe and the public safe. This is very dangerous policy, and I hope this gathers attention. We're just asking, hey, stop, start over, have a discussion. But we have legislation that would rescind it, but unfortunately you have very liberal and progressive, and not even so much that. It's just an extreme agenda that's coming out of Albany on criminal justice reform, and it's very scary. It's not going to do anything to make our communities safer, the public safer, and this is all going into effect. And down even in New York City, they were releasing some 900 people even before the beginning of the year. Governor Cuomo said he had no idea that this was going to be happening. Well, it was part of his bill, his policy that he pushed forward to say he didn't know. I mean, the head of the Office of the Court of Administration is his appointee. I don't understand how he can say he has no idea this is not coming down the pipeline and things like this are happening. So after the first of the year, you're going to have people who are in our county jails that are going to be released.
Well, the Steuben County District Attorney Brooks Baker was on the Newsmaker program yesterday, and he called this plan essentially catch and release.
Yes, that's a good way to say it, because that's what it is, because they can't hold these people anymore. You're going to give them an issue and an appearance ticket, and unless it's a certain crime like murder or something like that. But some of these other crimes, like I said, burglary, domestic violence, drug dealers, even people that do money laundering that might be tied to a terrorist organization, if they're money laundering, that would be a crime they would be released on. I mean, it's just very scary stuff, Jonathan, what we're talking about. And this is about, really, at the end of the day, this is about the safety of our public. And this package that is passed does nothing to keep the public safe.
You were at a news conference yesterday in Elmira, you said, and apparently the mood there was just about everybody's against it.
Absolutely. You know, they asked, what would you do? Would you change? How would you start? And you go, scrap it, start over. It's very, our law enforcement is very concerned. They're going to go out there and do the job. Our DAs are going to go out there and do the job, but it's going to require more resources. It's going to take more effort, more time, and it's going to be very, very expensive. And the taxpayers are the ones who are going to bear the brunt of this. So when we're talking about budget deficits and things like that at the state level, we should be funding this stuff for the local municipalities. If you want to put a new program in place, it's going to cost money. Then pay for it. But there's no money being backed up by this. And for the governor to say the counties don't need money, they can just shift resources, that's really disingenuous. The governor knows this is an unfunded mandate. Everyone knows this is an unfunded mandate. Not just a small mandate, a huge mandate. By some estimates, I think the Association of Counties say it's going to cost over $100 million statewide. If you talk to District Attorney Brooks Baker, he'll tell you it's going to be a significant impact, hundreds of thousands of dollars to Steuben County. It's a significant impact. This is going to be borne by the property taxpayer. So property taxpayers are going to be paying more money to be less safe. And that doesn't make any sense. That's very concerning to all of us. And that's why I think these press conferences were going on around the state to bring attention to this issue. Call the governor. Tell him to hold on this. Don't implement this plan. Let's have hearings. Let's bring in the stakeholders, our law enforcement and our DAs to be part of this process. Call the governor. Call Speaker Hastings. Call Majority Leader Stuart Cousins, who ushered this bill through the budget process with the governor. All three of them are responsible for this, and that's what they have all. This is all about downstate, but who cares about upstate and the safety of the residents upstate? And it's just very concerning. So that's why we're trying to draw attention to this. And I think this is something that could happen if we get enough outcry around the state. Look what happened with the ill-advised license plate tax and replacement program that the governor wanted to have. It didn't happen. It wasn't stopped because Assemblyman Palmisano, Senator O'Mara, and Assemblyman Giglio and Assemblywoman Burns spoke out about it. It stopped because the public was outraged and spoke out about it, and that's what stopped the program.
We have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on the line here. We're talking about the criminal justice reform, which goes into effect in January, unless we can stop it. So on a practical level, Assemblyman, if it's already been approved and is scheduled to go into effect in January, what are the chances of stopping this?
It's pretty slim, Jonathan. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It'd be very difficult, to really stop it. I mean, they could probably try to do administratively, say executive order, we're going to put on a halt. I don't think the governor would do that. Or the legislature could go back, call back themselves to session and say, hey, we need to make changes to this before it goes forward. Even the Attorney General had made some comments I saw where she said this is going to be difficult to do in certain circumstances. But no one's really speaking out. The Democrats in New York are not really speaking out of this. Some are, but not enough. And really the only way you'd be able to stop it is if the governor were to implement some kind of executive order, or if there was some kind of lawsuit to put it on hold, or the legislature were to go back and rescind it. And we have legislation that would do just that. Say, let's start over. Let's bring in the stakeholders to really, if you want to make reforms. No one's saying we couldn't make changes with discovery and bail reform. But to the extent that they did this whole bucket list of crimes that no longer give judges discretion to set bail, to put dangerous criminals back on the street, is a very scary thing for the public. And the public needs to be aware of this.
Assemblyman, it's Brian O'Neill chiming in with a question. Do you see any law enforcement agencies or district attorneys come January breaking the new rules and going ahead and holding someone even though it'll be against the rules?
I don't think so, because what you have is if you say you missed the discovery specific timeline frames, then you can have a court case of a dangerous person get thrown out of court or dismissed if they're not providing the information that's required under the law. And the bail, unless you meet certain criteria, it's pretty set up. If it's a certain type of crime, a certain type of degree, then they have to be released and issued a ticket. So, like Brooks Baker said, it's a catch and release program. And some of these people aren't going to show back up at court. Like I said, the drug dealer from New York City is not going to come back here. He's going to send the next person up and then the next person. The burglar, who knows what they're going to do? They're going to know where that witness is. They're going to go back. Who knows if they go back to their house? A domestic violence person. I mean, it's just Jonathan, I'm very distraught by these changes. And the fact that this was done as part of the budget process to put this type of policy, significant changes to our criminal justice system, rushed and stuffed into a huge budget document. It's just, there's no need for it, but it was a way that this new majority and with the Senate majority and the Assembly Democratic majority and the governor, this progressive liberal agenda. And it's not, and I said over and over again, I have friends and family members who are Democrats. The Democratic Party in control in New York State is not the Democratic Party of our parents and grandparents, or I'd say even sort of Democrats in Hornell and Steuben County. But it's been co-opted by an extreme agenda, like this AOC wing type agenda from downstate that's taken over and pushing for these policies that are very dangerous. it's like they're looking out for the criminal more than looking out for the public and the crime victims and their families. And that's very scary when you talk about this and you get into this and you get into some other issues like taxpayer-funded campaigns. It's really concerning to me of the direction that the state is taking at some of these policies. And we need to be aware of it. The public needs to be aware of it, and we need to speak out. I hope we can all speak out in one voice. I think when we do speak and stand together in one voice, we can stop bad change from happening and make good change happen. But
Well, Assemblyman, we have to go to a break. Could you hold on for a few moments because there's still one or two things I want to ask you?
sure thing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll be back.
From the Fox Sports Studios in Los Angeles, here's Eddie Garcia.
In the NFL, Thursday Night Football saw an AFC South clash in Houston with the Texans edging the Colts 20-17. Houston quarterback Deshaun Watson had a pair of touchdown passes to wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. Houston grabbed sole possession of first place in the AFC South with that win as they improved to 7-4. For Indy, they fall a game back at 6-5 and drop out of the playoff picture for now. Right now, Oakland would hold the final wildcard spot in the AFC. In the NBA, just 2 games on the schedule. The Bucks beat the Trailblazers 137-129. Reigning league MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo had 24 points, 19 rebounds, 15 assists in the win for Milwaukee. For Portland, CJ McCollum had 37 points, Carmelo Anthony 18 points and 7 rebounds. Pelicans over the Suns 124-121. College basketball, 7 ranked teams were in action. 6 of them won, including number 1 Duke, who beat Cal 87-52. The one upset was 22nd ranked Texas, losing to Georgetown 82-66.
The Ryan Agencies, your local, independent insurance agencies. The Ryan Agency is not beholden to any one insurance company. They work with many companies, offering unbiased insurance advice. Their interest is seeking your best interest. Contact the Ryan Agencies, good people offering unbiased advice, seeking your best interest.
Insurance protection you can rely on. The Ryan Agency.
The Ryan Agencies, your local, independent insurance agencies. The Ryan Agency is not beholden to any one insurance company. They work with many companies, offering unbiased insurance advice. Their interest is seeking your best interest. Contact the Ryan Agencies, good people offering unbiased advice, seeking your best interest.
Insurance protection you can rely on. The Ryan Agency.
At the Simmons Rockwell Nissan stores in Horseheads and Hornell, drive away in a new Nissan Altima SR all-wheel drive sedan for only $329 a month. New all-wheel drive 2020 Altima 2.5 SR models equipped with 19-inch alloys, sport tune suspension, and remote start. Lease with no money down for $329 a month for 36 months. Only tax and DMV fees are due at signing. Shop Simmons-Rockwell.com.
Hope we still do. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Assemblyman, you're there.
Sure, Jonathan.
Yes, okay. Also, there's another issue that is not the only issue going on in Albany. As a matter of fact, now that I think of it, this Criminal Justice Reform Act, it seems almost like an upstate, downstate thing.
It does appear that way, you
Yeah.
know, because what you're seeing more and more of in the discussions is really a lot of these hearings or these press conferences were held around the state. But let's not kid ourselves. There's dangerous criminals in New York City as well. There's crime in New York City. There's murders and all the burglaries and domestic violence and drug dealing in New York City as well. But it just appears that the policies they're trying to advance are more favorable towards the criminal than it is towards the victims and the crime victims and their families. And that's what we're seeing with the policies that with this new laws that are put in place. Again, no one's saying we couldn't make changes, but if you're going to make changes like this, certainly include our district attorneys, our law enforcement who are at the forefront of protecting the public, and certainly not rush it down through the middle of the budget process when we're dealing with funding the whole state $175 billion state budget operation. An issue like this really deserve to have its own attention, public hearings, public forums, and input from everybody, not just being crammed in the middle of a budget process. It's really unfortunate. Policy like this should not be put as part of the budget. Unfortunately, we see more and more of this happening as part of the budget, which is wrong and it shouldn't be done.
Well, once again, Assemblyman, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on the line here. If somebody's sitting at their kitchen table right now having a cup of coffee, or they're doing a little shopping or something, what can the average person do who is not in law enforcement? I mean, what can they do about this?
If I was them, and through some of the things we've done to announce it and get out in the public, I'd write letters, emails, call the governor's office, Call Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the Majority Leader of the Senate. Call Speaker Hasey's office and say, rescind these reforms. This is not making our homes safe. And certainly if they have legislators around the state, if you have family members and friends around the state, send an email to them. Say, hey, get on the phone to your legislators. Tell them to rescind this dangerous proposal. It's not going to make our community safe. It's going to make it more dangerous. So if you have family members in New York City, if you have family members and friends in Long Island or in Westchester or in Albany, wherever they may be, communicate the dangers of these new laws that are going on in the books. But please, don't just sit there and take it. We have to fight back. We have to push back. We can't just sit there and take it. I know it seems like a lost cause sometimes, but you have to push back. Take that time, send an email, call the governor's office. We should be lighting up the governor's phone line like a Christmas tree, quite frankly, saying this is wrong. Rescind this. Like the public outcry on the license plate replacement fee tax. People spoke out. There was a huge outcry from that. That's why the governor rescinded that. So let's do the same thing with this thing.
Now, another thing,
keep our community safe.
Now, another thing I know that interests you especially is a new plan in Albany for taxpayer-funded political campaigns.
Oh God, this thing really gets at my stomach. They created a so-called public financing campaign commission that's set to release its recommendations. This was another issue that the legislature punted on and set it up to a commission to put in place. And now, once they make the recommendations to us by December 1st, the word is they're going to release it like the day before Thanksgiving. Then the legislature has the ability to come back and veto it, not do it, change it, do their own thing, and or vote it down, or it becomes law. So what they're looking at, Jonathan, is basically creating a taxpayer-funded campaign system, and they think that's going to get the corruption out of politics to make politics more fair. Let me put it this way. I don't think this is going to help anything at all. They want to go to a New York City model. Like in New York City, they have a model where for every dollar you raise, you can get $6 in taxpayer funds. The models are talking about, some of the models I'm hearing being batted around are a 12-to-1 match. They're saying it's going to cost $100 million a year, $200 million in a 2-year election cycle for state office candidates. I mean, listen, think about what we're talking about. The thing is, I understand that our campaign system needs reform. No one's saying there's certainly too much money in politics.
Mm-hmm.
But the beautiful thing about it, it's voluntary. If you want to support my campaign, you can support it. If you don't want to support it, you don't have to. If you agree with me, that's one thing. If you disagree with me, you don't have to support it. But now the thing is, whether you agree or disagree with the candidates, your money, your tax dollars are going to be spent to help fund campaigns, yard signs, radio advertisement, TV commercials, newspaper ads for candidates you vehemently disagree with on policy. People like who passed this legislation that we talked about a few minutes ago are going to get some of your state tax dollars, income tax dollars, to fund their campaigns. $200 million is really low on my I think it's be much more than that. But wouldn't that $200 million be better spent to help provide improve our roads and bridges, or wouldn't that $200 million be better to go to our schools or our libraries, or wouldn't that $200 better if we don't need to spend it, give it back to the taxpayer, but to use it for political campaigns for people who we disagree with? I just think it's a very misplaced priority. And I think the public, if they really knew this was coming, this would be another thing that would outrage people. Our tax dollars shouldn't be going to fund political campaigns. We have a system that could use reform, so you get rid of the big campaign contributions. There's things we could do, but half the taxpayers have to mandatory participate in our elections with their tax dollars going to fund political campaigns makes no sense whatsoever. It's an outrage. It's an insult to taxpayers. It's an insult to our communities, and it just shouldn't happen. And I'm just very, very aggravated by this whole thing. It's my hope that whatever recommendation they put forward, the legislature goes back and rejects it. And it's just really, really frustrating. And it's just another example of these policies that are being implemented by the governor and the new majorities in Albany that are really go against the interests of upstate New York, go against the interests of rational people and common sense thinking. This is really extreme thinking to think that we should be using taxpayer dollars to fund political campaigns. It shouldn't happen.
Now, does
wrong.
Assemblyman, does this bill have a name yet?
No. Well, the bill this was passed as part of the budget as well, which was set up this commission. So it's not a bill specifically. This commission was charged with making recommendations that will be binding in law if the legislature doesn't reject it.
Well, Well, to some of we are out of time. I mean, literally, we're out of time. Always a pleasure having you on. Thank you very much.
At the Simmons Rockwell Nissan stores in Horseheads and Hornell, drive away in a new Nissan Altima SR all-wheel drive sedan for only